All right, fellas. As a new C4 Corvette owner, I've had the car for about 2 weeks. I'm gonna make this video kind of showing you some weird quirks that I've found with the car, and stuff that I didn't really pay attention to when I was looking for one, and just kind of some interesting features that I haven't seen on other cars. We'll start with the target top. Now, I'm very familiar with cars with T-tops. I've had a lot of F-bodies with T-tops, and on a T-top car, it has a big latch right about here that you undo, one on both sides, one for each T-top, and you lift it, and the T-top's about half the roof, and then you can put it in the trunk and lock them down. With the C4 Corvette and C5 and C6 afterwards, they have target tops. But what's interesting about the C4 Corvette is that there isn't a latch to remove it. There's actually 4 Torx screws, and you'll see them right there, right there, and it mirrors it on the other side. So you undo those 4 screws, and the car actually comes with a little wrench to do so, which I have in here somewhere. Here, this is the factory supplied wrench, to my knowledge, which you put up in there and you loosen all 4 screws. From what I understand, the front screws do not come out all the way. You're not supposed to remove them entirely. I think they're like somewhat captured, so you only have to remove them part of the way. Correct me if I'm wrong. Put that back where I found it. But yeah, so kind of an interesting tidbit there. So you just remove the 4 screws. You can pick the target top up and place it in the trunk. Now that leads me to my next quirk. The C4 Corvette has a glass hatchback here, but only the glass lifts up. Now that's not the weirdest part. It has a little button here that if you push it, you can tell it pops up. Now it's supposed to lift up all the way. The struts on mine, you know, they're 35 years old. They've seen better days. But kind of an interesting hatch, if you ask me. My next quirk about the C4 Corvette, and something that I never really paid attention to until I bought one, is the gas cap. Now, if you look down the side of the car here, you'll notice no gas cap. And if you look down the side of the car here, you'll notice no gas cap. And I really like that, actually, because it makes both sides of the car really clean looking. That was a big gripe for me on my 4th gen Firebirds, is they have a gas cap that has a big pump out for your finger to go in, and I think it just looks really bad. On this car, I think they've hidden the gas cap pretty well because it's right here. Kind of an interesting little quirk. I haven't seen this on any other car. On a lot of older cars, I've seen the gas cap, you know, behind the license plate, or on like a 2nd gen F body, it's in between the taillights, there's a little door. So I've seen that before, but I've never quite seen one like this where it's hidden under this little door. But I do like that. It makes a nice clean design, in my opinion. And it's also really cool because you can pull up to either side of the pump and it doesn't matter. You know, or on other cars, if the door is on one side of the car or the other, you have to pull up to the pump a certain way. Whereas this car, it doesn't matter. So I think that's kind of cool. Other quirks of the car, we obviously have the digital dash. If you know anything about C4 Corvettes, you know all about that. This one works fine. But something that I didn't really notice about C4 Corvettes is the headlights. So obviously they're pop-ups. Everybody likes pop-up headlights. I've had a lot of pop-up headlights on my Firebirds in the past, and they always open like 90 degrees from their resting position, right? They'll be flat, and they'll just go, and then they're up, right? On the C4 Corvette, that is not the case. I'm going to show you what they do. So it's kind of an interesting setup how they flip around 180 degrees like that. I've never seen another car with pop-up headlights that function quite like this. So that was kind of an interesting thing that I didn't really notice about C4 Corvettes until I had one. Another interesting quirk is that is as far back as the seat will recline. Kind of an interesting thing, because coming from the F-body world, I'm used to really hanging my seat way back. In this car, this is as far back as this goes, and it's pretty vertical for my taste. And I believe they do this just because they you look at the back of the seat, there's the floor, the carpeted floor section here, and it's up pretty tight against that. So you really can't angle the seat back any further. The passenger compartment in this car is so low relative to the frame that kind of limits the motion of the seat. It's not a huge problem for me, but if you're taller, you're really limited in headroom. Because even me, I have to crouch a little bit while I'm in the car so my head doesn't hit the target top. And if I really crank a big pothole, my head does tend to brush the target top aggressively. But we can move on to our next quirk, and that's the hood. So the hood, we release it here. Now we're supposed to shut the door because I've heard of people chipping their paint pretty badly if they don't. I don't see how that would contact, but it looks like it has in the past. But anyway, we'll lift it up. This is a ginormous hood. And I haven't seen this on any other car besides maybe a Viper. And that's that the whole front of the car is the hood. Fenders and everything. We have the lower fender, it's kind of its own piece. Kind of has to be actually removed to get the battery out, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, the whole front clip of the car lifts up like that, which is kind of cool. Makes things easy to see. Certain parts of the engine are a lot easier to get to. Stuff in the front, you know, certainly not the easiest to get to, but it's not terrible. Conceal your suspension components, so it makes, you know, suspension inspections a lot easier because you can kind of just look at stuff, peek your head in there, and take a gander. So it's kind of cool. Kind of an interesting quirk about the C4 Corvette. Now, if you're familiar with C4 Corvettes, obviously none of these will be a surprise to you. But if you're a prospective buyer like I was 2 weeks ago, these are kind of interesting things, I think. Another interesting quirk: the car does not have coil springs in the front or the rear. It has a fiberglass monoleaf in the front that spans from wheel to wheel, and it has a fiberglass monoleaf in the rear that spans wheel to wheel. Kind of an unusual setup. I haven't seen that being used on any other car. A lot of the GM front-wheel drive cars of the era had a front-wheel drive, or a leaf spring in the back, but they had McPherson struts in the front. So this is kind of an interesting setup, how it has leaves in both the front and the rear. But it seems to handle pretty good, you know. It's a 35-year-old car. It's not going to be comparable to the newer stuff, but it's interesting. It seems to do okay for its age. At the time, it was, you know, one of the better handling cars you could get. But these days, you know, we've come a long way. So that about does it for my interesting quirks about my C4 Corvette. Maybe I'll make another video as I've owned the car longer and I find other weird things about it. But so far, that's about it. If you're interested in buying a C4 Corvette, I say go for it. Currently, they're one of the few cars that are a relatively decent value, in my opinion. With the price of 3rd gens and 4th gens going so high, and older Corvettes going super expensive, and newer Corvettes are staying really expensive, I think these are an interesting sweet spot of, you know, relatively decent value for money. But yeah, you know, any questions, or if you have any other quirks that you've noticed on your C4 Corvette, by all means, put a comment down there, help other people out. As I find other things about the car that I think are kind of weird, I'll put them in the, maybe I'll make a new video. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys.